What's up, everybody? Nick Piles, publisher of 1851franchise.com. Very excited about the brand that we're talking about today because I love the category, children haircuts. We're going to get into that. And we're going to talk with Wade about his backstory in franchising. He's accomplished a lot. So coming up next on Meet the Zor. All right, Wade, I always start with this question, and I think it sets the tone the right way, where we'll get into the brand later. But how did you accidentally fall into franchising? What is your franchise story?
Well, I've been doing it for about 40 years now, so it's been a while. But if I can remember back, I got out of college and needed to recuperate from all my trials and tribulations of school and moved to Hilton Head, South Carolina to recuperate. And I ended up going to work in the first Heavenly Ham store that had started in Hilton Head. And it was the only one at the time. The original owners of that business had started it with the intention of building it into a franchise brand. And I just went to work in the retail store and ended up liking it, loving it, loved the product, loved the concept, and ended up hooking up with a couple other guys, and we ended up buying it and moving it back up here to Atlanta, Georgia, to try to build a franchise company out of it.
Okay, so go back to this starting point, and what always fascinates me is the perception of franchising versus the reality. So you take a job, you start working for it, and then you guys end up purchasing the business to actually franchise it. If you go back to the early moments, did you understand what franchising was? And, you know, as simplistic as this statement is, if you could go backwards in time and tell that old version of you, like, just so you know, this is what it's going to be like, what would be some of that feedback that you would give?
Well, the first question, did I understand? The answer is absolutely not. I mean, my job was, sweeping floors, mopping floors, cleaning toilets, making hams, not in that order. I just felt like we had a good product, and really there was no such thing as an entrepreneurship major in my college, so I didn't really understand it, but we had a good product and felt like we needed to expand it. And the best way to do that, we felt like, was through franchising. And we had one of the previous owners had been a franchisor before. And so we'd learned a little bit from him. And so, no, we wore every hat under the sun. We made every mistake under the sun. We kind of had this guiding philosophy that if our franchisees are successful, then we will eventually be successful. But we didn't really know much of what we were doing.
Okay, that last line, I would imagine, ends up being that's the code to franchising. If you look at success over your career, that how do we make franchisees successful?
Yeah. So
is that, like, obviously you knew it at the time. Is that a principle that continues to show its face throughout? Has anything else surprised you that maybe works in franchising that you wouldn't have expected it to?
In what regard?
Obviously, franchisee profitability is the key to growing a franchise.
Sure. Yeah.
But did you find that, the depth of product? So go back to Heavenly for argument's sake. Heavenly, you have competitor brands that are playing in the space. You're creating a point of differentiation in your approach on the cafe side, obviously. But were there other things as along this pathway that you extracted from your first run at franchising that you're like, that's going to be a secret sauce when I get into my next business?
Yeah, we did. We had a competitor that was kind of the big player in the market, and we were obviously the young startup. We ended up going to smaller markets to kind of fly under their radar, and had to figure out how to survive in those and thrive in those smaller markets. And so it was a lot about education of the concept, but we did add a lot of products that kept us afloat throughout the year. For instance, the ham business, when I got into it was Easter, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. We were selling $40-$50 hams at Easter, Thanksgiving, and Christmas for families and for corporate gifts and such. And what we had to figure out was, how do we survive year in and year out? Month in and month out, excuse me. And so we added the lunch business. We built the catering business. We built a box lunch business where we would deliver to offices around us. And we built those ancillary products, which brought people in throughout the year, but they also helped us establish relationships throughout the year, so that when we did get to Easter, Thanksgiving, and Christmas, we could maximize our utility in those big months when most of our business occurred.
I want to call out what I just heard, because I think it's deeply important, especially as we shift into your current business. A few things. One, the smaller town USA approach. What I love about that as a business model is when you perfect the business in a smaller town and you continue to inch closer to a major market, the average unit volume tends to continue to climb up. For brands that perfect it in, say, in New York City and leave New York City, the volumes tend to go down. And so from my viewpoint, that creates misguided expectations from the franchise owner, because they look at the big fancy AUVs, and when they're not doing that, even though the net profitability could be there because the real estate is more cost effective, the labor pool is more wide, the competition is less, they look apples to apples and they look at those AUVs. So because of that, because you guys ended up perfecting the model in small town, as you move towards urban markets, I would imagine the volumes continue to go up, which means the satisfaction of the franchise owner continued to climb if they were looking at what should I expect. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it is accurate, but it was also interesting that we started out higher, faster in the smaller markets. And the reason I think that is because when something like this comes into a smaller market, everybody knows about it really quickly, and there's excitement built up about it, and there's awareness of it. And I always used to say, well, if you go into New York and you plop it down on the corner of, X and Y streets, people walk by it every day, but they may never see it. But if you go into Troy, New York, it's a big deal because people are aware of it. So yeah, I mean, certainly we learned to operate in the smaller markets, and it helped us develop the larger markets. And certainly I think when you started sharing performance numbers with prospective franchise owners from smaller markets, their viewpoint might have changed as they were going into larger markets.
Yeah. Another thing, and because I know your current brand intimately, I hear or see similarities in what you were saying from maximization of time outside of the core. So in the ham business, Easter and holidays, winter holidays is where you're going to get your depth of sales. Yet a franchise owner is still paying for real estate and a box for the rest of the year. Similar to your business now, you're going to have a busier schedule in children's haircuts on weekends. And so now you have to figure out a way, how can we, one, leverage technology and labor the right way, and construct our hours to be conducive to the traffic that we're going to get during the week. But what other things, what are areas of opportunity to drive the right people in throughout the week? And so I see similarities in that, because what your structure, and maybe this is part of your franchise genius, small town America, the hero business in that marketplace still has to be, whether it's haircuts or it's hams, it's got to be the same thing. Profitability is essential, that we got to show that our operators can make money and continue to make money. And then maximization of your billboard or of your space, of how do we maximize this unit to squeeze the most juice out of lemon. And I think that creates a good business construct that you as the franchisor are privy to a lot of information in exchange for becoming a franchisee. A franchisee gets access to that. So I love those answers because I see the similarities as it pathways through. So tell me about Pigtails and Crewcuts, and what obviously the difference is in the product that you're selling, but I would imagine your expertise in business construct ends up being virtually the same.
Well, I think it's funny. They both start with H, so it worked out really easily for me. I didn't have to really overthink it. But it is very similar. We were in the ham business. We were selling a product that was very similar to something you could buy, at a premium that you could buy at your local grocery store for a whole lot less. But what we sold was that experience, that quality, that it was the best. This is what you wanted for your family, for your holiday events or your special events. And we charged a premium for it, but we delivered a premium. Mm-hmm. And so, I thought that was, I understood that model. And then when I found Pigtails and Crewcuts, it was kind of the same thing. I can go into the bathroom and cut my children's hair. Now, they're going to look funny and we're going to have to go somewhere and get it cleaned up. But do we have a service or a product that people want to pay a premium for their family, for their children? And what we found is that Pigtails and Crewcuts is very similar to the ham business in that regard. It's a premium experience for something that you can cut in your driveway, but that's not what people want for their children. They want the best for their children. They want the best food. They want the best medical care. They want the best education. And I think they want the best clothes and, that fits within their budget. And I think Pigtails and Crewcuts fits that same mold. It's the best that you can get for your children or your family. And so we're selling a premium. And that's exactly, you're right. It's the same sort of model.
I'm gonna give you a credit, and you don't pay me for credit. So let me put that disclaimer on here. I think the same is true like as a franchisor. Like a premium franchisor is a premium franchisor. And that's what I'm getting at is the widget, hair or ham, ends up being irrelevant. It's How do I support my franchisees? How do we continue to fine tune a business model that's going to go through changes over time? Now, obviously, I think both are somewhat recession resistant. Like still, like people are going to save up for Christmas, Thanksgiving, and Easter, and they're going to still spend the money, even if the purse strings get a little tighter, they're still going to spend there. Haircuts don't go away. You still want your kids to look good. So there's a lot of similarities in the business model. Just the widget has changed. That I think, like, I look at the depth of your team. I look at how long you've been in the seats, both the previous seat at Heavenly and now the current seat at Pigtails. And I'm impressed by that because ultimately the widget, you define the widget. You're almost franchising. And you've perfected what franchising is. Now the widget has changed. And I think that's part of the magic of being a good franchisor. You could tell me you're starting a pencil franchise tomorrow, and I would say you understand the construct of how to be a franchisor. It doesn't matter what you're selling.
Well, thank you, first of all. But I think if we have learned anything, I think the two businesses are so extremely similar because from our perspective, because again, what we're focused on is providing support, service, a concept, the knowledge, the tools that a franchisee needs to be successful. And those have evolved from when I started in the industry, from accounting on a 13 column ledger sheet and a pencil, to point of sale systems and trying to figure out what the best of a bunch of great software programs are, from the way we marketed, from the way we ran ads in local newspapers to search engine optimization, and all the techniques have changed, but the idea remains the same. It's our job to find the tools. It's our job to vet the tools, perfect the tools, make the tools the best they can be, and then teach franchisees how to use them and give them the maximum opportunity for success. So yeah, it is extremely similar.
On the topic of franchisee success, because you've seen many different types of franchise operators that come in, and I would imagine the similarity in ham versus haircuts is there's still an affinity for it. I saw your business, or I experienced your business cut, franchisee cut my child's hair. I saw it. I want to buy into it. I tried your ham. I tried the ham salad sandwich, which I loved. And I fell in love with the product. I want in. So I would imagine that the first step in is very similar too. But then when it comes to franchisee success, like they come in and what you just said is we're going to give you the tools to do it. But still, in my opinion, the difference between good and great when it comes to a franchisee is whether they do it or not. Like those that are like, oh, I'm not hitting the mark. It's like, well, did you do A, B, C, and D? Well, no. Well, that's on you. And I think that's part of, in my opinion, part of the miss between good and great franchisees. It's accountability. Does that resonate with you, or is there other things that you would add to that, like the difference between a successful and non-successful franchise owner?
Very much so. People ask me, what does it take to be a good franchisee? And particularly in Pigtails and Crewcuts. And my two responses are, you need to be a people person, because you have employees, you have customers, and you need to be able to relate to both of those two parties. And you need to make people want to be with you, either through your culture and have a great working environment, or through your customers and a great experience with the brand, with the concept. So that's first and foremost in my mind. You got to be a people person. And then the second thing is you got to be willing to follow the program. The program is, yes, it is constantly changing. Yes, it is constantly evolving. But generally speaking, it's following the steps day in and day out. It's following the guidelines. It's managing to the level of expectation that you should have, that is going to separate you and make you the great operator versus somebody who tries to reinvent the wheel on a day in and day out basis. It doesn't work. It's like a chef. If you have the executive chef of a restaurant who creates the menu, that includes ingredients, cooking temperatures, cooking times, serving methodology, and all that. If you get a freelancer back there who's creating his own recipes, well, what happens? Then you've got variations on each dish, and that doesn't work. And so, yeah, those are, to me, the two big things that you've got to look at yourself and say, am I a people person? And do I want to work with the public and with employees? And secondly, am I willing to follow the guidelines and the steps?
If we took all the franchisees who we deem as, I was going to say bad's a bad word, but not productive franchisees, and we put them all into a room, and you said, okay, you're all underperforming. Let's go back to the discovery day, and when you guys were telling us you believe in it, is that the gap that, like, obviously they don't get into business and investor life savings into this thing if they don't want to make it work. Going back to that day one. But is it that they're telling themselves that they're willing to work harder than they are, that they're willing to follow the system more than they are, that they're willing to put the money and the juice in more than they are? Is there some gap in that? Is it almost like they're treating it like a job interview than a real business evaluation?
I do treat it as a job evaluation, an interview. I think I try to find the best people that I believe after meeting them will be those things that we want them to be. But I think in addition to either somebody oversold themselves or they convinced themselves that this was right for them, or whatever, if things aren't going as swimmingly as they might, I would argue that as much as anything, it's outside influences. I hit a roadblock, I hit a stumbling block. And so I just rethought everything. And instead of just putting my nose to the grindstone and keeping doing what I know I'm supposed to do, I decided to flare off in a different direction. And I think those are the types of things that it's beholden to us as a franchisor to try to head those off, and or when we see them, redirect the franchisees, because everybody hits roadblocks. Everybody hits a bump in the road. I always tell people there's going to be a time when you grow frustrated with me, but you need to be we need to have the relationship for you to tell me, and then we need to talk about it and work through it. And for those people who we have that kind of relationship, it's great, because your relationship is so much stronger once you've hit those bumps and gotten on the other side of it. So, I think outside influences, Nick, to me are even more important than not understanding up front, because we try to tell the good, the bad, and the ugly when we do have that discovery day, because I think you need to go in with your eyes wide open. And if you do, then things, when the roadblocks come up, it's a lot easier to manage through.
There's a characteristic that I'm hearing here that I do think may be overlooked in the franchise sales process with many brands. And what I was hearing when you were explaining your answer, it's problem solving. Now, what's interesting about about problem solving as it relates to franchising, most franchise buyers are problem solving a gap in their life, either financially as it relates back to family, or they're going to get laid off from a job, or they've been laid off from a job and they turn to franchising as the solve to the problem. But it's almost like, what's that next question? Because you're right. We need the check marks on do they have the right financial bandwidth? Do they want to open in the market that they want to open in? Do we feel like they passed the beer test and that they're a good human being, so that fits and connects, and they're a culture add to our business? But then what happens on that rainy day? And if we can extract that in the sales process, and that's up to the franchisee too, to think through that. Like,
sure,
think back to the last hurdle that you had as a human. Did you quit? Did you battle through? How did it make you better as a human? Are you constantly asking yourself if you're making yourself better as a person? It's like that's another magic tool to good franchisees is trying to find that answer. It's not like it's going to be perfect, nor is it going to be predictable when you get into franchising. But I think it's a very insightful thing that you said that might be missed in the sales process. We might rely too heavily on the financial side and the culture fit versus how do they behave in problem-solving situations.
Yeah, I think we can all do a better job thinking that through. I agree. Yeah. One of the other things that I think people have to think about is this right for your family? What stage are you in life? And we get a lot of people who are interested in Pigtails and Crewcuts who are, they have 2-year-olds, and you got to understand that in this particular situation, this is a job, and this is going to takes some time. Yes, it's a semi-owned absentee model, but there is a lot of time that's required, certainly up front and at the beginning, to getting this up to a certain level. And does this fit into your family plan? And I think it's important with all businesses, with any business, not just Pigtails and Crewcuts. How does it fit into your family dynamic?
Mm-hmm. I think it's a tremendous point. And frankly, you had those answers, and I think this is important to note to the franchise buyers out there. Those answers are found in your gut. I will always tell a franchisee the three most important tools that you have in making a decision on buying a franchise is your head, your heart, and your gut. Like all of those are going to give you indicators whether it's right. But it's not just whether the franchisor is right for you. It is up to you to decide if you're right for the franchisor. And if you don't go through that exercise and you get to the place, and you said, Wade, at some point you're going to get frustrated with me, and we need to be in a place where we can work through that together and get to the next level and understand that whatever I'm prescribing as the franchisor, as the leader of this organization, is in the best interest of the organization. That's part of what you buy into. You buy into the leadership, but ultimately it's on the franchisee to make those decisions too. I think that's deeply important. So let's say there's a ghost candidate that's watched this discussion up to this point. Is there anything else you want them to know about your philosophy or the business that is important for them to know to make the decision to even get over to your website, fill out a form, and have a conversation with you?
I think it's important to get to know the individuals as best you can. I would certainly expect you to know the management team. I think truly fully understanding the business model is important. Understanding your market and the need for this in the market, whatever this concept is. I think those are important pieces.
Yeah. And I think all that is good. And I think, again, and I said this at the beginning, there's a lot of similarities in the brands that you've been at. I will always bet on the jockey, not on the horse. And so what that means in this scenario, I bet on a leader who has been through two different types of franchise models, but has perfected the franchise model. That's what I buy into. So if I'm a buyer and I'm looking at this business, not to blow smoke, but I look at you, Wade, and I say, how is your approach and how does that connect with me? Because I'm going to bet on you that you know what you're doing in this category, which clearly you have. You've been doing this for many years. And
that's great. But when you say perfected, it's never going to be perfect. So, we're always trying to make it better. And that's why we're always looking to do a better job day in and day out as a franchisor, and our franchisees are as well.
Love it. Well, Wade, thanks so much for sharing some of your story. Obviously, we'll have information if you want more on Pigtails and Crewcuts within this video. You can look down or somewhere around this video and you find it, or just use a most amazing tool in the world. It's called Google. Just go Google it and you can find them.
There you go.
Wade, thanks for the time. This is another episode of Meet the Zor.